Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers, and this is our multi-tester first run review of the Adidas Supernova Rise. Thanks to Sports Shoes for providing us with a review sample used in this video. So here's the key stats you need to know for the Adidas Supernova Rise. It's designed to be a daily trainer shoe that's priced at £130 in the UK and $140 in the US. It weighs in on average 277 grams for a men's version and 234 grams in the women's version. And we've dropped our UK men's size 8 on the scales as shown. It's got a 10mm drop and the stack height is 35.5mm at the heel and 25.5mm at the forefoot. You've got a mesh upper up top with Adidas's Comfort Heel Fit, which places cushioning foam and some softer material to provide comfort and support at the heel. The headline news is the new Dreamstrike Plus midsole, which is said to take inspiration from Adidas's Light Strike Pro midsole used in its top-end racing shoes to provide ample comfort and cushioning for daily training runs. That's accompanied by a support rod system that's packed into the outsole to offer added stability and support.
So the fit for me in the Supernova Rise, this is a size 8 in the UK, I'm a size 8. I found it to be a very comfortable shoe. There's plenty of space in the forefoot. The upper is nice and loose, so you can move your feet around in a bit, and there's plenty of space before the big toe as well. There's loads of padding in the upper. The only thing I would say about it is that I struggled to get a good lockdown fit in this shoe, possibly because there is so much padding in it. And as a result, I really have to tie it down to feel secure when I was out on the run today. But other than that, I would stick to my size in this shoe.
So the fit of the Supernova Rise is all good for me in my normal running shoe size. I'm a UK 9 with Adidas, that's a US 9.5. Sometimes their shoes can be a little bit tight and narrow, but I have a narrow foot. I think maybe the Supernova Rise isn't the widest shoe, but it fits me very well. Got a really nice padded heel and tongue on it, which is different to a lot of the Adizero shoes, which have those paper thin uppers that are a bit uncomfortable. Yeah, it's got a really nice hold, comfortable feel, and I was very happy in my normal running shoe size.
So when it comes to fit for me, I ran in my regular running shoe size, which is a UK 8.5, and I found that these fit really well true to size. I find Adidas shoes always come up for me a little bit narrow in the midfoot, and that's still true here to a certain extent, but it wasn't troubling particularly. It just is something that you can feel. The midfoot lockdown was generally good. The Rise held my foot nicely in place with no heel slipping and just about enough room in the toe box. So I think I would recommend going true to size unless you've got particularly wide feet and you don't get on with Adi shoes for that kind of narrowness in the midfoot.
So fit for me and the Adidas Supernova Rise was okay. I had mine in a UK size 8. It definitely is a little bit on the narrow side, and I've got pretty narrow feet, so I didn't think it would be a major issue. It's not so much particularly with getting up front in the toes here. I was pretty happy in terms of space up front in the toes and wouldn't feel like I need to go bigger to get that extra kind of room, but I think it just does noticeably narrow a little bit more when you get past that and up into the midfoot here, which I guess will make it a little bit better suited for kind of more kind of quicker daily training miles, but it is something that I have noticed compared to some other daily trainer shoes. Elsewhere, it's been absolutely fine. You do get a fair amount of padding here, and that's something that kind of Adidas has really kind of pushed here on the Supernova Rise. You're getting this very big padded tongue, and I'll get into this a little bit in the run test, but I found it a little bit big for me, and like just you need to work a little bit harder to kind of get a good lockdown with these laces on top of that tongue. But I'll get more into that in the race test, as I said. But yeah, as I said, the main thing for me, it's a little bit on the narrow side. That's something to be mindful of here. But I think going a UK size 8, which is generally my normal size, has been fine on the Supernova Rise.
So I'm just heading out to do my first run in the Adidas Supernova Rise. Looking forward to this one. I've got my Sunday long run on the plan, so I'm going to do 90 minutes just on field. Just going to cruise around, probably get a little bit mucky at times because it's been very wet here lately. I used a Supernova way back in the day, actually. I think it was my first sub-3 marathon. I had a Supernova on my foot, and it was a much bigger shoe than this, big old stack of boost. So it'll be interesting to see what this new foam is like, the Dreamstrike foam, and whether this can sit in as a more of a versatile daily trainer than Adidas has really had in the past compared to things like, I don't know, the Pegasus and stuff like that. I mean, I do think the Boston 12 is a very good kind of daily trainer in itself, but it's a bit more racy and lightweight, and the upper's much thinner and that kind of thing. So this seems to have a bit more comfort about it. We're really interested to see how it feels over a long run today. So I've just gone through 10k in the shoes, so not loving them so far. They're weren't quite what I expected. They're not as squishy, certainly, as they feel in the hand on the foot. And the stack almost feels a bit lower than it actually is, especially under the forefoot. So, you know, the foam's okay, it's not giving a load back. It definitely feels much more like a daily trainer than a very cushioned shoe. So Obviously, got another 10, 11k to go. Just cruising along. We'll see how they feel at the end, but so far, just kind of okay. So all done now. Ran about a half marathon, basically in 90 minutes. Nice and relaxed. Better from the shoe in the second half, I'd say. It felt a bit smoother. Transition eased up a little bit. It was a little bit stiff first half, and although I don't think it's like super comfortable, still it was comfortable enough for that kind of run. I think it falls in between the very, very cushioned shoes we've seen a lot of this year, and then the slightly nippier, lighter weight one. So that said, I've done very similar run to that in the Adidas Boston 12, and I think it's a more comfortable shoe for me. I think it just has a smoother, better transition and slightly better foams. But yeah, all in all, it was fine today. Certainly feels like it's got that workhorse daily trainer vibe to it, but nothing too outstanding there. I'll do some other runs in it, see if the ride keeps improving a little bit. Adidas shoes do sometimes take a bit longer to break in than others, I've found in the last couple of years, but yeah, an okay first run in it. Nothing too wow, but it might fill. It's kind of a gap in Adidas lineup, that kind of workhorse trainer equivalent to something like the Pegasus or the Puma Velocity Nitro 2. It's got a similar vibe to it to those shoes, but whether it's going to be as popular or as good as those shoes is the question.
So I've just come back from my first run in the Supernova Rise. Now the marathon training plan has me down to do 6 miles a day. I did just a little over that, pretty easy going in terms of the pace that was required. In this shoe though, it definitely felt a more up-tempo easy run, simply because what it feels like to run in this shoe. Now, my experience of daily trainer shoes from Adidas has mainly been around previous versions of the Boston. I haven't tested the latest one. I always found those shoes to be a little bit on the firm side. I can definitely say this is not like the Boston shoes that I've tested in terms of it's kind of Adidas daily trainer shoes. There is a lot of bounce in this shoe. It kind of reminds me, as soon as I put it on, it reminded me when I started getting running of something like those kind of early Nova Blast versions, where it really has that, Asics talks about that kind of trampoline, kind of bouncy feel to it. That's definitely what I found in this shoe. And as I said, I went out to go and do a pretty easy run. I definitely found the general nature of the shoe made you want to go a little bit more up tempo in this, because there's just such amount of cushioning here and a lot of kind of very noticeable prominent bounce in the shoe. There's a good rocker in it as well, but it's the bounce that mainly is the overriding feeling of running in this shoe. Now for me, that's absolutely fine. I think stability wise it's okay. I do think maybe I prefer if it was rained in a little bit. I'm absolutely up for kind of having that kind of really nice, lively, energetic ride, but I felt in the latter kind of stages of my run, I did feel it a little bit more on my knees, and I wondered if it was just a little bit of that kind of aggressive bounce that you're getting here in this shoe. It definitely felt comfortable. One thing I mentioned in the fit is I was a bit worried about how this tongue is very padded and very big, and I found it quite difficult to kind of really get a good lockdown of those laces on top of this tongue. It's so much padding here, and I think maybe Adidas maybe not quite got that right for me. I know it's really about offering a good level of comfort on those kind of longer runs, but ultimately the lockdown just felt a little bit sloppy for me in that first run. It didn't slip around at the heel, and I do think there's good padding here at the heel generally, but I'm not 100% convinced over the kind of the paddiness of the tongue here. Outside wise, absolutely fine, had no issues. it's pretty treacherous out there. It's very rainy. It's very windy, it's wet, so perfect conditions to kind of test how much the outsole kind of handles those conditions. Absolutely fine. I didn't find myself slipping around. Cornering was absolutely fine as well. I think there's a good level of rubber here, both the forefoot and the heel as well too. So yeah, I did find, as I said, I went out to do a pretty easy kind of going run. I did find, because of the level of bounce and liveliness you get in this shoe, ultimately makes you want to run a little bit quicker in it, and the weight feels okay for it as well too, to run a little bit more up tempo. I just wonder if maybe that level of bounce and that ride maybe needs to be tempered a little bit for me, but personally based on that first run, and also my kind of little kind of worries about the kind of the lockdown that you're getting here on the tongue and the laces as well too. But I can see this feels like a good addition to the kind of daily training shoes that you get from Adidas. Just wondering whether maybe it is a little bit on the aggressive side in terms of the level of bounce that you're getting here and the liveliness, and maybe has Adidas got the balance right here. But I'll get into that in my initial verdict.
Now for the run test straight out of the box, I think these had good step-in comfort. They're quite plush padded collars and tongues. They're not quite as instantly disappearing on the foot and natural fitting as something like the Saucony Ride 17 that I tested recently, which were a joy straight out of the box. But this is a pretty good fit. And yeah, they were they were a shoe that wanted me to go and run in them quite early. When it comes to the ride, I've got these in towards the firmer, more responsive end of things, though not too firm, they're not over firm, but they're somewhat a little like a livelier Adi Zero SL. I get smooth transitions, good roll through from the rock ring. With the 10mm drop, I felt almost sort of tipping into the toe off. The landings are cushioned, but the Peber-based Dreamstrike plus midsole foam and those support rods, that support rod system quickly stiffens, I think, to give a lot more immediacy here. There's not as much sink as you get with some shoes, but I did get some spring. But basically you're getting a compliant, responsive platform to run off without the squish that you might find in bigger stack, softer daily shoes. Now I put them through about 12 miles in my initial test with a mix of paces from 9.5 minute miles up to my marathon pace 6.5 minute miles, and they performed at both ends of that. They were much better at faster paces, and I actually found myself almost encouraged to tick along faster in this shoe. There's a really good energy to them, I thought, and I put these at the firmer, faster end of daily trainers. I think that some people might even enjoy racing in them potentially. Now, I'm not 100% sold on the thicker uppers that you've got here, this kind of engineered sandwich mesh upper. It just feels a bit dense for me. But overall, first run, really kind of impressed, and I'm really excited to take them out and do more. I think you're going to have a versatile shoe here.
So my first run in the shoe was actually a race down in Brighton, or in Peacehaven near Brighton, and it was more of a trail race, and I really shouldn't have worn this for a trail race because it's not designed for that. But last year when I did the race, it was really dry and a lot of people were using road shoes. This year it was really muddy and wet, so I did not make the best use of this shoe for a first run. So I'll only talk about the road sections. There was about 8 kilometres on road and about 8 kilometres on the traily sections. And what I found is that it's a very solid, comfortable daily shoe. I didn't really notice anything particularly amazing about it. The midsole foam is bit softer than what I'm used to with a lot of Adidas shoes I've tested. This Dreamstrike Plus midsole foam, and I didn't really notice anything. There's a lot of other features within this shoe. I think they've got this sort of rod design in it. I didn't really notice that in it either. But what I would say is that over the course, those 8K that I did on the road, it did a very comfortable job. I'd say it fits into that realm of shoes like the On Cloud Surfer 7, something like that. And it just feels comfortable. It's a very comfortable shoe to wear. I didn't really get a lot from that midsole foam. It's not necessarily bouncy. It's a nice balanced foam. But I would say the shoe for me feels a little bit chunky for what I think it delivers. I think there's other shoes out there that are a little bit lighter. Like things like the Puma Liberate Nitro 2, shoes like that, where they're doing a similar thing, but they just feel a bit lighter on the feet and a bit nimbler. This feels a bit clunky. It's a great workhorse. It just powered through those kilometres very comfortably. I didn't have any issues at all. I even went down to about 4 minute 10 kilometres in this shoe as part of that race that I was doing, and it seemed to deal with them okay. I didn't think about the shoe on my feet, so it definitely feels like there's a little bit of versatility in it. But it's not a particularly light shoe, so I don't think it necessarily be a great one if you were racing or anything like that. It actually feels quite traditional to me. It feels like a lot of shoes that brands make that have been around for a while, things like the Ride range, stuff like that, where they're just a solid shoe. It doesn't really do anything that amazing. But it did the job completely fine. I felt very comfortable in it. The other thing I would say about this shoe is that the outsole did a relatively good job. It's a bit of a strange outsole really, because it's got a sort of mix of different rubbers on it. On the most of the road sections it was fine. I did find it was a little bit slippy on a couple of road sections. I think it might have been this midsole section here, which is quite smooth, but it did seem okay for me. It was definitely completely fine on most of the road conditions, and it was quite there's a lot of elevation in the run today, and it probably pushed it a bit far to the test. Other than that, I think it was a solid, comfortable, enjoyable run and had no real issues with it at all.
Now, verdict then, based on my initial miles, I think this shoe will cater to a wide range of runners for a lot of different runs. It's a welcome antidote to the really big stack dailies that we've seen become more prevalent if you wanted something different to that. And I was impressed by how responsive this was. If you're a fan of big hulking great monsters like the Invincible or the Nimbus 25, this might be a little bit too stiff for you, perhaps a little bit too much coming up from the tarmac underfoot, but I really enjoyed that kind of immediacy and that sort of connected ride, and I enjoyed my early miles in this shoe. I felt like I was getting plenty of benefit from the foam, that rods, the rocker combo. It encouraged me to move faster, and I was, happy running at quicker clips in this shoe with lower heart rate. So overall, I felt like I was having to work less hard in it. So overall, I think the Rise strikes a happy balance. The cush is not too soft and heavy, but it's also not too thin and firm. And though this isn't the lightest daily trainer on the shelves, it felt light on the foot and nicely precise actually, but with a good, stable, reliable platform to run off. For my money so far, I'd say there's good versatility here. And for £130, I think for the longer mile tests, or once I've done that, I think you're going to get good value in the shoe too. I like the fact the Adidas is offering as well a no questions 30-day trial. If you're not happy with how the Supernova Rise performs after 30 days, you can just send them back no matter how many miles you've done in them. That's kind of pretty fair to me.
So obviously just one run, so just early verdict here, but I think this is a pretty solid shoe, the Supernova Rise. I think when you looked at the explosion of all the different tech in the shoe that Adidas sent over, and the fact it's a new foam, it all seemed very exciting, and the foam felt quite soft to the touch, but on the run it firms up a bit, it's stable, it's comfortable, but not very cushy or anything like that. It doesn't give a load back on that first run, so I'll be hoping to see a little bit more from it in the future. At the moment it feels okay, like a good solid shoe, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that puts it in a good bracket, going up against things like Pegasus, obviously testing the new Saucony Ride at the moment as well, which is another pretty solid shoe. Puma Velocity Nitro 2, obviously I'm a big fan of. I think the Supernova Rise will fit quite well into that bracket. It's a shoe that maybe Adidas hasn't really had. The Adi Zero SL is a firmer shoe. I didn't enjoy it for long runs really much. And then there is the Boston, which I do think is a great daily trainer. It does a bit of everything, but I know it is a bit racy and lightweight for some people, and certainly the upper isn't as comfortable as the one on the Supernova Rise, so there is a bit of a gap potentially in Adidas's lineup. It will be interesting to see how the Supernova Rise feels on some more runs. For the moment, I think it's a solid shoe, but one that didn't really massively excite me on that first run there.
So my early verdict on the Supernova Rise is that it is a solid workhorse daily shoe that doesn't really wow in any way. As the cost is actually a little bit lower than what you'd expect from most premium daily shoes at the moment. £130 is near the lower end of what you're expecting to pay these days. A lot of shoes are coming in at like £160, £170 now, so it's definitely a cheaper option if you're looking for a daily shoe. And to be honest, I think it's fine for that. I think it's priced well. From that first run, I didn't have any issues with it. Felt very comfortable. Just felt like a shoe that I wouldn't think about on my feet as I was running. And I'd probably say any sort of daily miles, easy runs, recovery runs, it feels like that's what the shoe is designed for. Nothing particularly exciting about it, so I don't think it would be an amazing long run shoe because it doesn't really do a lot. I probably like a bit more bounce in my long run shoes, or a little bit more softness, or something that just sort of makes the run easier, which I don't think you're getting from this. But it's a solid, comfortable workhorse shoe. I'm not against wearing it for many more runs based on that run I did today.
So initial thoughts on the Adidas Supernova Rise off that first run is that it feels like a shoe that's kind of filling a void in Adidas's range in terms of being a kind of very up-tempo daily trainer. I think there's something that's not overly firm, giving you something that's kind of lively as well too, which I think it's been lacking in its collection. And based on the daily trainers that I've tested from Adidas, I feel like there's a good place for something like this in its range. It makes me think of other up-tempo daily trainers like the Saucony Triumph. I think things like the On Cloud Eclipse, what I've tested recently as well too, and the Asics Nova Blast as well. And I do think it has that liveliness of those kind of early Nova Blast shoes. And I think if you like that, and you like that in a kind of up-tempo daily trainer, then I think this is going to appeal. It's at a pretty good price, I think, in terms of when you look at what else is out there in this kind of category. So from that point of view, it looks like a solid kind of addition to that kind of Adidas range of shoes. My only reservation is I do think it's maybe too bouncy for me. But again, it might just be the run that I've done today where it just didn't quite work for what I wanted to do. And I think easing off, it felt like it really wanted me to run it a little bit, not necessarily harder, but a little bit more up-tempo in terms of my run. And I think if you're looking for something with a more up-tempo edge, it feels like a daily trainer that can offer that, at least what I'm seeing that first run. But yeah, as I said, definitely sits in that kind of Nova Blast, Triumph, particularly of kind of category in terms of daily trainer shoes. And I think if you've been looking for an Adidas shoe in that kind of mould, and you can get this kind of narrower kind of fit to work for you, then I think there's a lot of shoe here to like. So there have it, some initial multi-tester thoughts on the Adidas Supernova Rise. Obviously plenty more running to do in the shoe before we get to a full review, but if you've got any questions, you know what to do and where to put them. Thanks again to Sports Shoes for providing us with the review sample used in this video. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.